In ancient Egypt, two courageous midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, faced a harrowing command from Pharaoh himself, to kill every Hebrew baby boy at birth. Refusing to obey, they acted with compassion and bravery, allowing the children to live and preserving the hope of an entire people. Their defiance was not just an act of rebellion, it was a testament to the power of conscience and faith. Through their courage, Shiphrah and Puah became unsung heroes of deliverance. Imagine living in a world where your very existence is considered a threat. A time when the ruling empire sees your people's growth not as a blessing, but as a danger. This was the world of the Israelites in Egypt. Enslaved, oppressed, and burdened with backbreaking labor, they cried out for deliverance. And in the middle of this dark chapter, two women, Shiphrah and Puah, emerged as unlikely heroes. Their courage, compassion, and faith in God changed the course of history. They were midwives, ordinary women with extraordinary conviction, and their actions preserved the line through which one of the greatest leaders of Israel, Moses, would be born. This is the story of the two midwives of Moses, their encounter with Pharaoh, their defiance of evil, and the eternal lessons their lives offer us today. To understand the story of Shiphrah and Puah, we must first return to the backdrop of the book of Exodus. The Israelites had once found favor in Egypt. Joseph, one of Jacob's sons, had risen to prominence, saving the nation from famine and providing security for his family. But times changed. Generations passed, and the new Pharaoh had no memory of Joseph's contributions. The Israelites, blessed by God, multiplied greatly. What Pharaoh saw as a vibrant, growing community, he interpreted as a threat. Fearing they might rise up and ally with Egypt's enemies, he chose to enslave them. Yet even under the crushing weight of oppression, the people of Israel continued to grow. Frustrated, Pharaoh turned to a more sinister plan. He summoned the Hebrew midwives, and this is where Shiphrah and Puah step onto the stage. What is the Pharaoh's command? Exodus 1:15-16 tells us, "The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, 'When you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live.'" This was not merely a cruel decree, it was genocide. Pharaoh wanted to systematically cut off the future of Israel by killing every male child at birth. Without men to carry the lineage, to fight, to lead families, Israel would eventually dwindle and die out. Pharaoh was cunning. Instead of openly slaughtering children where outrage might spread, he commanded midwives, the very people trusted to bring life into the world, to betray their calling and become agents of death. But Pharaoh underestimated something, the fear of God in the hearts of two women. Who were Shiphrah and Puah? The Bible introduces them by name, Shiphrah and Puah. This is remarkable in itself. Egyptian royalty is left unnamed in this passage, but two Hebrew midwives are remembered for eternity. Names in Scripture are not casual. Shiphrah means beauty or fairness, and Puah can mean splendid or girl child. Their very names remind us of life, vibrancy, and hope, everything opposite of Pharaoh's death-dealing command. They were likely leaders among the community of midwives, perhaps overseeing teams who served Hebrew women in childbirth. Their profession was sacred, rooted in compassion, care, and the miracle of new life. And now, that sacred trust was being threatened by an order that contradicted everything they stood for. The midwives' defiance. Exodus 1:17 declares, "The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live." Here lies the heart of their story. Shiphrah and Puah feared God more than Pharaoh. Think about the courage this required. Pharaoh was the most powerful man in the known world. His word was law. To defy him was to invite death. Yet these women valued obedience to God above obedience to man. They understood a truth echoed later in Acts 5:29. We must obey God rather than men. When faced with the choice between participating in evil or risking their own lives, they chose righteousness. They protected the newborn boys, cradling fragile lives that Pharaoh wanted destroyed. Confrontation with Pharaoh. Of course, Pharaoh noticed that his plan was failing. He summoned Shiphrah and Puah again and asked, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" Their answer was both clever and brave. Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive. Exodus chapter 1:19. Some interpret this as a strategic half-truth, others as an explanation rooted in genuine observation. But one thing is clear: the midwives placed themselves in danger by even standing before Pharaoh. Yet they managed to give an answer that diverted his wrath while still protecting the lives of countless children. God's reward is. Exodus 20-21 tells us, "So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own." This is a profound reward. In ancient times, midwives often remained unmarried or childless, dedicating their lives to serving others in childbirth. For God to bless Shiphrah and Puah with households of their own was not just a personal gift, it was a divine affirmation of their faith and courage. Meanwhile, Israel continued to multiply. Pharaoh's schemes were frustrated at every turn, and the stage was being set for the birth of a deliverer, Moses. Of course, it has a connection to Moses' story. The bravery of Shiphrah and Puah was not an isolated act. By sparing the male children, they preserved the generation from which Moses would come. Their decision had ripple effects across history. When Moses was born, his parents, Amram and Jochebed, hid him for 3 months. Later, he was placed in a basket on the Nile and discovered by Pharaoh's daughter. Moses would grow up to challenge Pharaoh, lead Israel out of Egypt, and receive the law at Sinai. But none of that would have been possible if the midwives had obeyed Pharaoh's command. Their quiet courage in the delivery rooms of Egypt helped set the foundation for Israel's deliverance. Lessons from Shiphrah and Puah. The story of these two women is more than a historical account. It is a mirror held up to our own times, asking us, will we fear God more than man? Here are some powerful lessons we can draw from Shiphrah and Puah. Number 1, fear of God over fear of man. They respected God's authority more than Pharaoh's. True courage begins when we value God's approval above human approval. Number 2, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Shiphrah and Puah were not queens, prophets, or warriors. They were midwives, yet their faithfulness shaped history. Number 3, the sanctity of life. They honored life in the face of a culture of death. Their example challenges us to protect and value life in all its forms. Number 4, God honors faithful obedience. Because they feared God, he rewarded them. Obedience, even when costly, never goes unnoticed by God. Number 5, small acts have ripple effects. Saving one child at a time may have seemed small, but their faithfulness paved the way for Moses and the liberation of Israel. Number 6, wisdom in answering authority. Their response to Pharaoh shows that sometimes wisdom and tact are needed to confront evil without reckless defiance. Let us reflect for a moment. Shiphrah and Puah embody what it means to stand firm in faith under pressure. Their story reminds us of other biblical figures who chose God over man. Daniel refusing to stop praying, even when it meant the lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refusing to bow to Nebuchadnezzar's golden image. The apostles boldly proclaiming Christ, even under threat of imprisonment. In every age, God calls ordinary people to extraordinary courage. Perhaps you may feel insignificant, just one person among millions. But like Shiphrah and Puah, your faithfulness in daily choices matters. You may not know the ripple effects of your obedience. You may never see how your courage inspires others, but God sees, and he honors those who fear him. How do apply these lessons in our modern world? In today's world, we may not face Pharaoh, but we do encounter pressures to compromise our faith, our values, and our integrity. When society tells us to conform, will we stand for God's truth? When injustice demands silence, Will we speak for what is right? When life is undervalued, whether in the unborn, the vulnerable, or the oppressed, will we, like Shiphrah and Puah, choose to protect and preserve? The story of these two midwives calls us to be people of conviction, people who fear God more than human power. Conclusion. Shiphrah and Puah may not be household names, but their legacy lives on in every act of courage, every defense of life, every choice to honor God above man. Because of their faith, countless Hebrew boys were saved. Because of their courage, a nation's future was preserved. Because of their obedience, Moses, the deliverer of Israel, could be born. Their story is a reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are not those on thrones or battlefields, but those in quiet rooms, making unseen choices, motivated by fear of God and love for life. So the next time you feel small, remember Shiphrah and Puah. Remember that two midwives changed the course of history. And remember that with God, your courage, too, can make a difference far beyond what you can imagine. If you find value in this video, please kindly click subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss a video. God bless.